What's up guys, it's Wasabi and I'm back with another mousepad. And today we have a new mousepad sent by Kurosun. Thank you Kurosun. But as always with the content on my channel, these are my thoughts, personal opinions and experiences with the product. Anyway, here's a quick look at the packaging because that's what you pay for too. This mousepad comes in a flat packaging, the preferred packaging amongst gamers. Inside this packaging you have another packaging. That's a lot of boxes. Nice minimalistic presentation with the design here. You got an envelope here and inside you got a thank you card, a placement guide, instructions to maintain the pad, and a brand sticker. Then you got the pad itself. And that's pretty much all that's included inside the box. Now before we go any further, let's manage some expectations here real quick. Kurosun is a pretty new brand and today's mousepad is their second release. It's designed in the United States and made in Taiwan, and the Kurosun Samurai is available for a price of $49. The brand and its design takes inspiration from Japanese culture and keeps things very minimalistic. It's got a white stitching border around a black surface and with a big print of a samurai. The samurai graphic is ink printed into the fabric so you won't feel it under your mouse, and I think the graphic looks okay. Some people would like it, some won't. I used to collect katanas as a kid, and a suka with this curvature is not something you usually see with Japanese katanas for the sake of handling. Anyway, the logo and branding is printed above the surface so you will feel it when your mouse goes over it, but it's far in the corner and you're unlikely to get there unless you flip your pad around and play up to the edge. Not a pad design I would say fits on any setup. The white stitching makes it difficult to match on different desks because it visually comes off as an outline but looks fine on white or black desks if you're fine with the contrast. The Kurosun Samurai is available only in a 490 by 420 size with a thickness of 3mm. This is my favorite size for most gaming mousepads because you got more than enough space to use both high and low sensitivities. I occasionally swap between low and high mouse sensitivity for gaming and testing products, so 490 by 420 is a nice size that I enjoy very much. This pad uses a close knitted and layered mesh fabric, and in a way with this pad, you could say there are 3 layers: the black mesh surface, a white mesh underlayer, and the alpha cell base. And with the 2 top layers, it helps to handle moisture, which I will mention more about later. The stitching is soft, which feels comfortable against your skin, but the stitch work is pretty average, and on the top side is neat, but on the bottom it's a little sloppy. The Kurosun Samurai has a custom alpha cell polyurethane base, and alpha cell is something you would see commonly being used for gaming mousepads today. And brands who use alpha cell usually experiment with different base patterns to change things up a little. No problems with the level of grip with this pad. It does a good enough job at staying in position on my desk and hasn't shifted with my time gaming on it. This has what they call a semi-firm base, and this leans more towards soft, but because it is thin with a thickness of 3mm, it doesn't sink in so much, which makes this feel more like a mid-density pad. Nice density for gaming, but comfort-wise you could do with a 3.5mm thickness to bring out the comfort you experience from a soft density pad. And on my density meter, this pad feels right about here. This is an odd pad. When you use it for the first week, there's a lot more rougher resistance against your skin with vertical movement compared to horizontal. So it's both a smooth and rough experience, but I emphasize that you really gotta give this time to break in because you need the threads to soften out for the roughness to go away. Comfort from resting your arm on the edge, it's decent, but it's on the thinner side, so there isn't much cushioning with this pad. And overall, the comfort with the feel of this surface and the base density, I personally find this pad to be pretty average with the comfort. How this pad handles humidity is where it really shines, and honestly one of the best in this regard. I live in a tropical climate and sometimes I shut the windows and have the air conditioning on. Sometimes I game with the windows open and there's really not much effect to the consistency of how this feels. The surface has been very resistant to sticking when my palm or forearm gets sweaty from long gaming sessions, and these are 2 things that I feel are absolutely brilliant about this pad. It's said that this is a balanced pad. Well, this is not a balanced pad, at least not in the beginning. And yes, every pad changes to some degree with the level of speed and control after some time, but the Kurosun Samurai has a much more contrasting difference than other pads. You see, when you first get this pad, and I remember the experience quite vividly because the difference in texture and friction between the X and Y axis is very noticeable. It feels rough when you go up and down the pad and much smoother when you go from side to side. This is because of the directional mesh pattern, and the threads are very very tight, or if you're familiar with fabrics, the fabric is very stressed right out of manufacturing. And because of this, the Samurai feels much slower than you would expect from a balanced pad. So only until this has broken into the point where the roughness of the material evens out, you then get a pretty decent level of control, friction, and speed with the vertical and horizontal movement. And only then it starts to feel more like a balanced pad. Because of the design of this mesh, you are probably wondering if the friction of the X and Y axis will have a 1-to-1 balance. Well, no, which is why with most mouse pads made for competitive gaming, they have no pattern with the surface, or if there is, it's a pattern that allows for even friction with all directions. But this one will balance out to a point where you should not notice it unless you really try to. But nonetheless, no matter how I phrase it, I know that this is something that not everyone will be comfortable with, especially gamers who want the absolute best for competitive gaming. Another thing about the surface is when using dot skates is that the difference of the surface is a lot more noticeable than using full skates. No problems using this with the PAW 3395, Razer's new Focus X sensor, Focus Pro 30K and 35K optical sensors. They all work just fine as they should. Now, final thoughts and what I think of its value. Well, I'm not too fond of the design, but of course design is subjective, and maybe this Japanese-inspired take on a samurai is something that you can appreciate. This is a pad you really gotta let it fully break in before you decide if you like it or not. And the reason I keep mentioning this is because the difference in resistance against your skin with the vertical and horizontal movement when you first get it is enough to make people toss it aside. So if you do get one, give it some time, and I like to think that it's the material just loosening up and not my dead skin that's filling up the gaps in the mesh. But yes, give it some time and it's a pretty decent balanced pad to use. For $49, it's somewhere in the mid-range and an interesting pad to check out. I don't feel like it's trying to compete with more popular pads on the market. They are trying something new and I totally respect that. Right now, there are too many pads on the market that hype it up with a graphic and call it a day. A little tip if you want the pad to break in quicker and more evenly, what I did is every now and then I'll rub my hands up and down the pad as well as in areas where my mouse occasionally covers to help relax the fabric evenly. I don't think that how the material behaves is a bad thing. It's kind of like leather products. The more you use it, the more you enjoy the material as it breaks in, and honestly, I would have bought it on launch day if this was mentioned. But I didn't because the details and writing felt like it lacked passion and knowledge of their own product, which totally put me off. But you know, just saying, how they present their products is completely up to them. And as always, at the end of the day, these are my thoughts, personal opinions, and experiences with the product. Interesting pad, and there are some things I would like to see. Stitch work could be improved. I think for a pad that has so much attention to detail with the presentation, people would expect a more refined finish with the product. Introduce a good quality pour-on base for even more grip. It doesn't have to be Japanese, but even better if it is, because it would be very fitting with the theme of the brand. And ink printing of the logo instead of this silk screen, if I'm not wrong. And for me, I hope they make one with black stitching because it makes it fit better on most setups and wood grain desks, and print the graphic in dark gray or a darker shade. It's nice that there's a graphic, it gives the pad character, but it pops out a little too much because in my peripheral vision, I can't help but feel like there's an object on the right of the mouse pad, and I instinctively would try to avoid that area. This is an interesting pad, and I feel that the difference in friction in the X and Y axis is something that should be highlighted on the website. It's best for people to know what they're getting into than finding out for themselves and leaving a bad review. I love the resistance of its surface against humidity. It's seriously one of the best. If sticking has been something that has been driving you nuts, then this pad just might be your saving grace, and I love that they're trying something different with a mesh surface like this. I like my Allison Zero and Zowie pads. Those are one and done pads and are very heavily used in the competitive competitive scene for good reason, but I will say that the Kurosun Samurai has been one of the most interesting experiences from a pet in a while, and I'm glad that it's just not like my other pets. It is out of stock at the moment though, so if you are interested, I would recommend to follow their Twitter page because most brands post restock announcements there. And with all that said, I feel Kurosun as a brand has the potential to create some really interesting pets, and I very much look forward to what they come up with next. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video or found it helpful in any way, please leave a like and subscribe to support the channel, and I guess I'll see you in the next one.